The bell over the gun shop door gave a tired jingle as the old man pushed it open. His boots were worn, scuffed at the toes from years of use, and his jacket still carried the faint smell of gun oil, though it had been patched more times than he could remember. His back was stiff, his steps slow, but his eyes gray as steel and steady missed nothing. Inside, racks of polished rifles lined the walls. Handguns gleamed under glass counters. A few younger customers leaned over cases, pointing out the latest polymer pistols and tactical shotguns. Behind the counter stood two men, the store's owner and his young clerk, both of them giving the old veteran a look that wasn't exactly welcoming. "Afternoon," the old man said in a gravelly voice. The clerk, barely in his 20s, raised his brows. "Can I help you?" The veteran nodded. "Looking for some .308, decent quality, nothing cheap." The owner, a man with a paunch hanging over his belt, crossed his arms. "We don't run a pawn shop here, old-timer. If you're just browsing, keep it quick. We've got paying customers." The veteran's jaw tightened, but he didn't rise to it. He simply leaned closer to the glass case, inspecting the ammo stacked beneath. "I'll pay." "Always do." But the young clerk chuckled under his breath. "Pay with what? That social security check? Maybe trade us a story about A back in the day. My granddad fought in Vietnam too." "Doesn't mean he comes in here wasting our time." A few of the younger customers laughed quietly, glancing at the stooped figure. The old man's eyes narrowed, and for a brief moment, there was a flash of something dangerous there, something forged in fire and chaos far from this quiet town. But then he exhaled slowly, straightening up with effort. "I'll take my business elsewhere," he said simply, turning for the door. The clerk called after him, grinning, "Yeah, try the surplus store down the street, Grandpa. Maybe they'll let you trade old war medals for bullets." The laughter followed him as the bell jingled once more and the door closed. Outside, the sun was sharp and merciless. The old man walked slowly down the street, his chest tight not from the humiliation, but from the memory it stirred. He remembered younger men under his command, brave men, who'd once looked at him not with ridicule but with respect. He remembered the nights in desert cities where every shadow might hide death, and the silent waves slipping onto hostile shores. He remembered, most of all, the promise he had made to those men, "I've got you, always." That promise never went away. 1 hour later, the gun shop bell rang again. This time, the laughter died instantly. The first man through the door was tall, broad-shouldered, with a beard kept neat despite the scars along his jawline. His movements were fluid, alert and predatory. He wore jeans and a plain t-shirt, but no one could mistake the way he carried himself. Behind him came 3 more men, and then 2 women, all cut from the same cloth. Their eyes scanned the shop with a kind of precision that came from years of breaching doors in foreign countries. The clerk blinked. Can I help you folks?" The bearded man didn't answer right away. He turned to the others, who fanned out casually but deliberately, taking in every corner of the store. Finally, his gaze landed on the owner. "We're looking for a man, older, gray hair, walks with a limp. Came in here about an hour ago." The owner frowned, shifting uncomfortably. "Yeah, he was in here. Old vet type. Caused a bit of a scene, so we asked him to leave." The bearded man's eyes hardened. "You asked him to leave?" The clerk piped up nervously. "Look, the guy Wasa Yui didn't look like he could afford anything. We've got a business to run." There was silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. One of the women, a tall, sharp-eyed blonde, leaned against the counter, her voice calm but edged with steel. "That man you threw out is Chief Petty Officer Jack Riley, retired SEAL Team Commander, 30 years of service, 2 silver stars, a chest full of ribbons you couldn't earn in 10 lifetimes." The clerk's face went pale. Another of the SEALs, a younger man with tattoos peeking from under his sleeves, leaned in close to the glass case. His tone was mocking, but his eyes burned. "Didn't look like he could afford anything, huh? That man bought every one of us our lives 10 times over. Paid in blood." "You'll never understand that kind of currency." The owner swallowed, realizing too late the mistake he'd made. "Listen, I didn't know who he was." The bearded leader stepped forward, his presence filling the room like a storm. "That's the point. You didn't care. You saw an old man and thought he didn't matter. But let me make this clear, you don't get to disrespect one of ours. Not here." Not anywhere. The SEALs didn't shout. They didn't threaten. They didn't have to. The weight of their words carried the gravity of battlefields most civilians would never comprehend. Finally, the blonde woman tapped the counter with one finger. Here's what's going to happen. You are going to box up every round of .308 you've got in stock, the best you have. You are going to bag a cleaning kit, oil, brush as a top shelf, and you are going to write it up as paid. Understand? The owner stammered. Buddha, that's hundreds of dollars. The bearded man's glare cut him off. Consider it penance. The clerk scrambled to the shelves, loading boxes into a bag with shaking hands. When the supplies were finally stacked on the counter, the SEALs gathered them up. Before leaving, the leader leaned close to the owner, his voice low. You should pray you'd never see the chief again, because if you do, you'd better show him the respect he's earned. Every breath you take in this safe little country is because men like him carried the weight you never could. And with that, they left, the bell jingling one last time. Outside, the veteran sat on a bench, cane resting against his leg, watching the sun dip lower in the sky. His eyes widened slightly as the SEALs approached, their arms laden with supplies. Chief, the bearded man said, his voice softening in a way it hadn't in the shop. We heard what happened. The old man tried to wave it off. Doesn't matter. I've been called worse. But the blonde shook her head firmly. No, sir, it does matter. Your family, and family doesn't let this slide. One by one, they laid the bags at his feet. Ammo, cleaning kits, even a new case of oil. The veteran blinked hard, his throat tight. You didn't have to. We did, the leader said simply. Because you'd have done the same for us. You already did. More times than we can count. The old man looked at the aim of the men and women he'd once trained, guided, protected. Not all of them had been under his direct command, but the bond of SEALs was deeper than blood. His hands trembled slightly as he reached for the bag, but the younger man with tattoos gently set it into his grip. Thank you, the veteran whispered. The leader crouched in front of him, meeting his eyes. No, Chief, thank you. And in that moment, the old veteran felt the weight of the years ease, just a little. He wasn't just a forgotten relic of wars past. He was still one of them, always would be. As the SEALs helped him to his feet and walked with him down the street, the townspeople who had seen the exchange in the gun shop whispered among themselves. For the first time, they began to understand who that old man really was. Not just another grayhead in a worn jacket, but a warrior who had stood in the dark so they could live in the light. And behind them, the gun shop sat in silence, its owner and clerk shaken to their core. Because they knew one thing with absolute certainty, they would never forget the day they kicked out the old veterana, and an hour later, the entire SEAL team showed up.